Obviously, why people go to restaurants is because of the food. I mean, like that's a big element of it. You go to restaurants for the food, right? And if the food is delicious, that's a big component of guest experience, and you're more likely to get that guest to come back again. But how do restaurants measure that experience? How do they measure whether the food was delicious and whether the guests really, really loved the food? There needs to be a really systematic thinking around that, and the guest feedback around the quality of the food needs to be a big part of the technology plan, so that restaurants can continually improve the quality of the food and make sure there's no downside either. Make sure there's no gaps or dips in quality of the food. That it seems obvious that where the restaurants are about eating, but that's exactly what they are. And technology, just because we live in a world where technology is everywhere, shouldn't forget the fact that going to a restaurant or eating restaurants food is a very visceral, physical experience, and as much of that can be measured, should be, and decisions should be made based off those measurements.
So I think as you begin thinking about how the restaurant industry is going to continue to expand, and oh, by the way, IT will have a big role to play in this, how do you track where the food is? What's the environmental conditions of that food? Did it arrive at the customer site in a certain amount of time, in a certain at a certain temperature, at a certain humidity, where the fry is crispy or whatever, right? So you can start thinking about where this is taking you, not today, maybe not even tomorrow, but certainly 3 or 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road with IoT, where you might be able to put sensors in your delivery packaging and see where that's going. And again, this all feeds back into this idea about bringing that quantifiable data set back so you can run analytics against it, so you can improve your business and improve what you know about your customers.
If you remove the word data, like if we ban the word data now and ban the word IT, restaurants have been doing this for 50 years. A server comes down after, hands you your check and says, how was your food? The steak was shit. That goes back to the kitchen straight away. Hey, that steak was shit. Don't cook it like that again. So people have been collecting this data for decades. The only difference now is the 23-year-old who's ordering on an app will never talk to your server, ever. So giving them the ability to say, the steak was shit is really, really important, and also recording that to kind of capture that information. So there's a bit of I suppose, inertia to move because it's like, oh, data, and I'm not an IT guy and this is so scary. It's not. It's all there. You're used to doing this. It's just packaged in a different manner.
A lot of restaurant leaders get very scared of the word data. They say, yeah, I have a lot of data, but what value does it have, right? For me, a lot of times, just that general word, because I think it's also part of, our responsibility as vendors in this space, because we keep talking about data, just get inundated, they get desensitized to the word, and they're like, whoa, with more data, well, what do I need?
Makes you sound really
data,
smart,
right?
though.
Yeah. Huh?
Data.
Exactly, yeah.
Big data.
Big data, right? It sounds very exciting. But I think it's our job as an industry to talk about, like, what are the stories we can tell that make the importance of insights and data kind of exciting to a consumer of that, which would be the restaurant decision makers, which helps them make better decisions and run a better business. And I think it's very easy to say, as in this space, that I just have too much data, and I hear that, I have that conversation all the time. I just have too much, but not all data is the same, and not all data is presented in the same way. And there's actually also, to be honest, I think there is a level of I would say numerical literacy that could be improved in the industry, and that's part of the job of the vendors to kind of help education of, like, statistics, right? Like, yes, you have a certain amount of data right now, and you can do so much with it. But if you had 10 times more, you could do this much more with it, and this is why, because you have sample bias, you have all this sorts of thing. Like, we are dealing with the law of large numbers when it comes to restaurants, and I think the stories need to be told in better ways, and the education needs to be better, so that it's not just tech leaders who are fighting an uphill battle with their restaurant operator, colleagues of, like, why they need more data. It's about the stories, it's about the visualizations, it's about the better decisions that people can make with those stories, right, and with the visualizations.
Yeah, I think the important thing for all restaurants to realize is, and Raj alluded to it earlier on, the loyalty should be, and largely still is, with the restaurant that you're ordering the food from. The lines are definitely getting blurred because expectations currently are being met by different channels. And you know, I literally had a conversation today about how do I attract a 23-year-old customer. And you know, the restaurant that I was talking to was like, yeah, well, if we're not digital, we just won't be able to do it. So I think what you'll kind of see here is there's a lot of themes that tie into one another, and I'll go back to it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So once a restaurant kind of makes the initial decision to say, okay, I need to shift this, it'll never be as bad as it is right now.